The family thought they were adopting a retired police dog. Quiet, unusual, unlike any dog they had ever seen. But the moment the vet examined him, his face turned pale. Within seconds, he stepped back, locked the clinic door, and whispered, "Call the police. Right now." What was this dog hiding? Truth will leave you shocked. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The Johnson family had never planned to adopt a dog. Not today. Not during their quick stop at the retired police K-9 center. They'd only come because little Emma begged her parents to just look. But the moment they stepped inside the facility, the atmosphere felt different. Quiet, tense, as if the walls carried secrets no one dared to speak. Rows of retired police dogs waited behind their kennels, most wagging their tails or pressing their noses against the bars. Officers walked around explaining each dog's service history to visiting families. But Mark and Olivia didn't listen for long, because something else caught their attention. A dog stood alone at the far end of the hallway. Not barking, not moving, just watching. His skin was dark, smooth and hairless, almost like polished stone. His ears were pointed, upright, unnervingly still, and his eyes, those piercing yellow eyes, followed the Johnsons with an intelligence that immediately made Mark stop in his tracks. "Mom, what is that?" Emma whispered, tightening her grip on her mother's hand. Before Olivia could answer, an officer approached with an expression that was neither welcoming nor encouraging. "You're looking at Shadow," he said quietly. "He's different." Different was an understatement. Shadow didn't behave like any dog they had ever seen. He didn't pace, didn't bark, didn't show fear or excitement. He simply held their gaze, unblinking, as if studying them, evaluating them. "Why is he isolated?" Mark asked. The officer hesitated. "Because he doesn't do well with the others. Shadow's been through operations most dogs never experience. Classified units, special missions. He's not like the others. Honestly, we don't recommend him to families." Olivia felt a strange pull toward him anyway. There was something hidden behind those eyes, not aggression, but pain, loneliness, a silent plea no one else seemed to hear. "Has anyone ever adopted him?" she asked softly. The officer shook his head. "People are intimidated by him, and Shadow, well, he chooses who he trusts." He lowered his voice. "He hasn't chosen anyone yet." As if hearing those words, Shadow slowly stepped forward, his gaze shifting from Mark to Olivia, to Emma. The little girl didn't flinch. Instead, she crouched and extended a small hand through the bars. Shadow did something no one expected. He lowered his head, gently pressed his forehead against her fingers, and closed his eyes. The officer's jaw tightened in disbelief. "I've never seen him do that." Olivia exhaled shakily. Maybe he just needed the right family. Mark exchanged a long glance with her, and in that moment, they both knew. They weren't choosing Shadow. Shadow had chosen them. "Let's bring him home," Mark said. And with those words, their lives quietly shifted, toward a truth none of them were prepared for. Shadow's first steps inside the Johnson home were slow, deliberate, almost calculated. Unlike most dogs, he didn't sniff around or explore excitedly. Instead, he walked through the hallway with silent precision, as if sweeping the area like a trained operative. His yellow eyes scanned corners, doorframes, and windows with unsettling focus. Emma giggled and ran ahead. "Come on, Shadow, I'll show you my room." But the strange-looking dog didn't follow her. He turned sharply toward the living room wall and stood completely still, muscles tense, ears pricked forward. Mark frowned. "What's he staring at? There's nothing there." Shadow didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe, at least not visibly. Olivia gently placed a hand on Mark's arm. He's just adjusting. Poor thing probably had a difficult past. But deep down, even she felt something odd twisting in her stomach. Throughout the evening, their new companion continued behaving in ways none of them expected. When Olivia opened the windows to let in fresh air, Shadow instantly backed away from the sunlight, lowering his head as if the brightness hurt him. When a car honked outside, he didn't flinch, but when Emma accidentally dropped a metal spoon, he reacted violently, spinning around and releasing a low, guttural sound that chilled the room. Emma froze. Olivia stepped between them. "It's okay, sweetheart. He's just scared." But that wasn't fear Mark saw in Shadow's posture. It was instinct, training, a readiness to attack or defend in an instant. Dinner time wasn't much different. Shadow didn't touch the food they placed in his bowl, not the canned dog food, not the fresh chicken, not even the treats Emma offered. Instead, he sat quietly beside the dining table, eyes fixed on the family, watching their movements as though memorizing them. "He's not eating," Olivia whispered. Mark nodded slowly. "He's observing." Later that night, after the children went to bed, Mark and Olivia talked in the kitchen, their voices low. "He's not a normal dog," Mark said. "The way he moves, the way he looks at things. It's like he's still on duty." Olivia sighed. "We don't know what they did to him in that program. Maybe this is all he knows." Before Mark could respond, a noise echoed from the upstairs hallway. A soft scratching, a low growl. They rushed to the stairs, only to see Shadow standing at the top, his body rigid, eyes locked onto Emma's bedroom door. "What is he doing?" Olivia murmured. Shadow growled again, deeper this time. Not at danger, not at an intruder, at something inside the house they couldn't see. Mark felt a shiver run through him. Shadow wasn't scared. Shadow was guarding them. But the question was, from what? That night, Shadow refused to lie down or sleep. While the rest of the house settled into quiet darkness, he paced the hallway with slow, controlled steps, each movement precise, each turn deliberate, like a soldier guarding a perimeter. Every few seconds he paused and lifted his head, ears twitching toward sounds the family couldn't hear. At midnight, Mark woke up to the sound of scratching. At first, he thought it was a tree branch brushing the roof, but then it came again, sharp, rhythmic, and unmistakably close. He slid out of bed and walked to the door. Shadow stood in the hallway, muscles rigid, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He wasn't scratching. He was listening. Mark whispered, "What is it, boy?" Shadow didn't look at him. His gaze stayed locked on Emma's room, the same door he had growled at earlier. Suddenly, he stepped back, lowered his front legs into a defensive crouch and released a deep, vibrating rumble that seemed too strong for his lean frame. Mark's heart rate spiked. He quietly opened Emma's door and peeked inside. Nothing. Just a sleeping child curled under a pink blanket, her stuffed bear tucked beneath her arm. But Shadow didn't calm. Instead, he moved again, this time toward the attic door at the end of the hallway. The scratching sound returned, louder, as if clawing against wood. Olivia came rushing out of the bedroom, frightened. "Mark, what's happening?" Before he could answer, Shadow rose onto his hind legs and pressed both front paws against the attic door. His growl grew sharper, more urgent. He wasn't reacting out of curiosity. He was warning them. "Is something in there?" Olivia whispered. Mark swallowed hard. Probably just animals, raccoons or birds. But even he didn't believe his own words. Animals didn't move like this, didn't scratch in slow, deliberate patterns, didn't become silent the moment a dog approached. Shadow abruptly turned, sprinting downstairs with startling speed. Mark and Olivia hurried after him. In the living room, he stood facing the back door, head low, lips trembling. A shadow flickered outside the glass, something tall, something moving just out of sight. Mark reached out to touch Shadow's collar, but the dog snapped his head sideways, not to bite, but to warn him to stay back. Then it happened. A loud thud echoed from the backyard. Shadow forced his body against the door, barking for the first time since arriving. Harsh, raw, almost desperate. Emma came running down the stairs, frightened. "Mom! Dad!" Olivia pulled her close. "It's okay, sweetie." But nothing felt okay. Something, or someone, was watching their home. And Shadow wasn't afraid. He was preparing to confront it. The next morning, the Johnson family gathered around the dining table, each of them looking more tired than the last. No one had slept well, not with the noises, the shadows, and Shadow's relentless pacing echoing through the house. Olivia pushed her coffee aside. "We need answers. This isn't normal dog behavior, not even for a retired police dog." Mark nodded. "I'll call the K9 unit he came from. Maybe they can explain what kind of training he had." Shadow sat near the window, motionless as a statue, his amber eyes fixed on the backyard like he was monitoring a threat no one else could detect. Emma sat beside him, gently resting her hand on his back. He allowed her touch without moving, but his body stayed tense. Mark dialed the number listed on the adoption papers. After a few rings, a gruff voice answered. "K9 Division, Officer Ramirez speaking. Hi, this is Mark Johnson. My family adopted one of your retired dogs yesterday. His name is Shadow." Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable. Then a cautious reply. "I see. What exactly do you need, Mr. Johnson?" Mark hesitated. "We just want to know more about his training. He doesn't act like a normal dog. He barely sleeps. He reacts to certain sounds. He seems like he's still working." Another pause. This one longer. "Shadow's file is restricted." Mark frowned. "Restricted? We adopted him legally. Isn't his history supposed to be disclosed?" "Not his full history," Ramirez said quietly. "Shadow wasn't part of a regular K9 unit. He belonged to a specialized operation. That's all I can say." Mark's stomach tightened. "What kind of operation?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson. That information is classified. If you're experiencing behavioral issues, I advise you to return him to our facility. He's not meant for civilian life." Shadow suddenly turned his head, eyes narrowing as if he sensed he was being discussed. Mark lowered his voice. "We're not giving him back. We just want to understand him." Ramirez exhaled slowly. "Then be careful. Shadow's instincts are advanced. If he's acting alert, don't ignore it. He's trained to detect things before humans do." "What things?" Mark pressed. Another pause. "Danger," Ramirez finally said. "Of any kind." The call abruptly ended. Mark stared at the phone, feeling a chill creep up his spine. Olivia watched him anxiously. "What did they say?" "Nothing helpful," he muttered. "Except one thing. Shadow wasn't trained like other dogs, and whatever he learned, it wasn't for normal police work." At that moment, a soft whine rose from Shadow's throat. He stood abruptly, tail stiff, body bristling. He wasn't just alert. He was warning them again. Something was coming. By afternoon, Olivia suggested taking the kids to the neighborhood playground to help everyone relax. The restless tension lingering from the night before had drained them all, and she hoped fresh air would settle Shadow too. Mark agreed, though he kept a close eye on their strange new companion. The moment they stepped outside, Shadow's posture changed. His ears flattened, his steps slowed, and his head moved left to right, tracking every sound, every motion, every passing person. He stayed close to Emma as if glued to her side. At the playground, children laughed, swings creaked, and parents chatted near the benches. It was a normal, peaceful scene, except to Shadow. He sat with his back straight, tail still, watching everything with surgical precision. Emma ran toward the slide, Come on, Shadow, play with me. Shadow didn't move. He stared, focused, studied the area like a surveillance machine. Mark forced a smile. Relax, buddy. It's just kids playing. But Shadow didn't relax. Not even a little. Then it happened. As Emma climbed the ladder to the slide, Shadow suddenly jolted to life. His body snapped forward, muscles coiling like a compressed spring. He let out a sharp, deep bark, his first real bark since coming home, and sprinted toward her with alarming speed. "Shadow, what are you doing?" Olivia shouted, heart leaping. Before Emma took her next step, Shadow lunged upward and grabbed her jacket with his teeth, not to attack, but to pull her back. Hard. Emma screamed as she toppled onto the sand, frightened but unharmed. Olivia ran over, panicked. "Shadow, no!" But the dog wasn't looking at Emma. He was staring at a man. A tall man walking past the edge of the playground, head down, hands buried in his coat pockets. He didn't look threatening at first, but Shadow's reaction was immediate, violent. The dog positioned himself in front of Emma, body low, teeth bared, ready to strike. A growl rumbled from his chest. Dark, thunderous, primal. The man froze. His eyes darted, toward the family, then toward Shadow. A flicker of fear crossed his face, and without a word, he turned and walked away. Fast. Too fast. Mark narrowed his eyes. Who was that? A nearby mother whispered, "That guy doesn't have kids here. He's been circling the park for 20 minutes. Olivia's skin crawled. Shadow didn't calm until the man disappeared completely. Only then did he step back, letting Emma hug him, licking her cheek as if apologizing for the scare. Mark exchanged a tense look with Olivia. This wasn't random. Shadow wasn't reacting out of confusion. He had identified a threat before any human did, and the way the man fled. It felt like Shadow had just prevented something far worse. That night, the house felt different, not quieter, not calmer, just heavier, like something unseen had followed them home from the playground. Mark double-checked the locks. Olivia kept glancing at the windows. And Shadow. He remained glued to Emma's side, refusing to let her out of his sight. After dinner, Emma insisted on giving Shadow a bath. He got sand in his fur, she said, though he didn't have fur at all. Still, Olivia smiled and agreed. Maybe it would calm him down. Mark filled the tub with warm water while Shadow stood still, watching the rising steam. Unlike most dogs, he didn't resist the bath. He simply stepped in and lowered himself into the water with robotic obedience, as if trained for it. Emma giggled, gently splashing water onto his smooth skin. "See, Mom? He likes it?" But Olivia was staring at something else. The water exposed thin, dark lines running under Shadow's skin, barely visible, like faint scars or embedded shapes. At first she thought they were shadows from the light, but when Shadow shifted, the lines moved too. "Mark," she whispered, "look at his side." Mark leaned closer, frowning. "What is that?" Under Shadow's ribcage, something metallic glimmered beneath the skin. An unnatural, sharp-edged outline. A small rectangle, connected to thin lines that branched like circuitry. Emma gasped. "Is he hurt?" Olivia gently pressed her fingers against the area. Shadow flinched, releasing a low, warning growl. Not aggressive, just terrified. His eyes darted toward the door, then toward Emma as if begging them not to touch that spot again. Mark's voice tightened. "These aren't scars. They look like implants." Shadow stood abruptly, water splashing over the edge of the tub. His breathing quickened, not panting but controlled, tense, like a soldier anticipating an attack. He stepped between Emma and the adults, positioning himself protectively. "Shadow," Olivia said softly, "we're not trying to hurt you." But the dog didn't relax. Instead, he lowered his head and stared at the bathroom doorway as if expecting someone to appear. His muscles twitched, tail stiff, body trembling. Mark stepped back. This isn't normal. Dogs don't have embedded shapes under their skin unless someone put them there. Olivia swallowed hard. We need to take him to a vet. A real exam. Not a basic adoption checkup. Shadow's reaction was immediate. He whipped his head toward them, eyes wide, body freezing. For the first time since he arrived, he looked genuinely afraid. Not of them, of the idea of being examined. Emma hugged him gently. "It's okay, Shadow. The doctor will help you." But the dog's trembling only intensified. Mark and Olivia exchanged a long, uneasy glance. Whatever was hidden beneath Shadow's skin, someone didn't want it discovered. The next morning, the Johnsons drove to Dr. Harris's veterinary clinic, a quiet, small-town place with pastel walls and soft music. Normally, the clinic felt comforting, but today, a strange unease followed them from the moment they stepped out of the car. Shadow refused to move. He planted his feet on the pavement, body stiff, eyes scanning the building like it was an enemy stronghold. Mark tugged gently on the leash. "Come on, buddy, it's just a checkup." Shadow didn't budge. His breathing grew shallow, his tail lowered. Then, shockingly, his entire body trembled. The fearless, silent dog who confronted threats without hesitation was suddenly terrified, not of the vet, of being examined. Emma knelt beside him and hugged his neck. "It's okay, Shadow. We're all here." Her small voice soothed him just enough for him to take a reluctant step forward. Then another. Inside the clinic, Dr. Gregory Harris greeted them with his usual friendly smile. He had silver hair, gentle eyes, and decades of experience. "Well now," he chuckled, "you must be Shadow. Quite a unique-looking fellow." Shadow didn't react. He didn't approach. He simply stared, suspicious, rigid, like he was analyzing the vet's every micro-movement. Olivia took a breath. "Doctor, we noticed something under his skin. Lines, shapes, maybe implants." Dr. Harris raised a brow but kept his voice calm. "Let's take a look." The exam room fell silent as Shadow was lifted onto the table. He didn't fight, but his body remained unnervingly still, as if bracing for something inevitable. The vet gently ran his hands over Shadow's sides. Well, his skin texture is already unusual, but—" He stopped. His fingers froze over Shadow's rib cage. All color drained from his face. "Doctor?" Mark asked. Dr. Harris didn't answer. His jaw tightened as he pressed more firmly, tracing the metallic outline beneath the skin. Then he abruptly stepped back, eyes wide with something far beyond concern. Fear. Real fear. He swallowed hard. What kind of dog did you say this was?" "A retired police dog," Mark said slowly. "From a special unit." The vet's hand trembled slightly as he reached for a small handheld scanner. "Don't touch him for a moment." He ran the scanner over Shadow's chest, and the device beeped instantly. Not the normal beep of a microchip. A shrill, urgent, high-frequency alarm. Dr. Harris's shoulders stiffened. He lowered the scanner. Then he looked at the Johnsons with a seriousness they had never seen in him before. "Step out of the room," he said quietly. "All of you." Olivia blinked. "Why? What's wrong?" The vet locked his eyes on Mark. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I need to examine him alone, and I need you to call someone. Immediately." The moment the Johnson family stepped out of the exam room, Dr. Harris quietly closed the door behind them. But instead of continuing his examination, he reached up and locked it. A sharp, metallic click echoed through the hallway. Olivia's breath caught. Why did he lock it? Mark didn't answer because he didn't know, and because the look in the vet's eyes before the door closed still haunted him. Inside the room, Shadow stood alone on the table, perfectly still, watching the vet with unblinking intensity. No growling, no fear, just cold awareness, as if he understood exactly what was happening. Dr. Harris wiped his palms on his coat. His hands were shaking. "What did they do to you, boy?" He lifted the scanner again and passed it across Shadow's torso. Beep, beep, beep. The alarm screamed, vibrating the walls. But then something else happened. The lights flickered, only for a second, but long enough for the vet to step back in terror. "No, this isn't possible." He gently pressed his fingers around the rectangular shape embedded under Shadow's ribs. The edges were too clean, too precise. Nothing like a surgical plate or medical implant. This was tech, and not civilian tech. He grabbed a small flashlight, shining it across Shadow's skin. Beneath the surface, thin metallic filaments ran outward like branching veins, connecting the implant to other areas of his body. Shadow's pupils narrowed, almost warning him to stop. Dr. Harris swallowed hard, then reached for his phone with trembling fingers. His voice quivered as he whispered into the receiver. "This is Dr. Gregory Harris, veterinary license 14592. I need immediate assistance." A voice crackled on the other end. "State the emergency." The vet hesitated, staring into Shadow's glowing eyes. "I believe I've just identified an unauthorized military-grade implant inside a civilian-adopted animal." Silence. Then the voice dropped to a cold, clipped tone. "Where are you?" "Riverbend Veterinary Clinic, Exam Room 2. "Lock the door," the voice said. "Do not let the animal leave. Officers are en route." Dr. Harris's heart hammered in his chest. "What kind of implant is this? What was this dog used for?" "We can't discuss that over unsecured lines," the voice replied. "Just keep the room secured." The call ended. Dr. Harris stood frozen, staring at his shaking hands. He glanced at Shadow again, expecting panic. But the dog sat quietly, watching him, studying him, as if he already knew the police were coming. Outside the locked door, Olivia grabbed Mark's arm. "What is going on?" Before he could answer, they heard it. A loud scrape from inside the exam room, then a low, bone-deep growl, and then the vet's terrified voice. "Don't come in. Stay back." The clinic's hallway felt colder than before, silent, thick with dread. Olivia held Emma tightly while Mark pressed his ear against the locked door of Exam Room 2. Inside, something heavy shifted across the floor, followed by a low, vibrating growl that didn't sound like any normal dog. Then, sirens. Multiple. Close. Too close. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows as two police SUVs screeched to a halt outside the clinic. Officers jumped out before the engines had even died, hands resting on their holsters, urgency carved across their faces. Olivia's heart thundered. "Mark, what did the vet see?" "I don't know," he whispered, "but it's something serious." The clinic door burst open as Sergeant Cole, a broad-shouldered officer with a stern jaw, stormed inside, followed by three others in tactical vests. He scanned the hallway in seconds. "Who brought the animal in?" he demanded. Mark raised his hand shakily. We did. What's happening?" "We'll ask questions later. Where's the dog?" Mark pointed at the locked door. "The vet is inside with him." Sergeant Cole stepped toward the exam room and knocked sharply. "Dr. Harris, police, open the door." Inside, the vet's strained voice responded. I can't. He's reacting to something. I don't want him startled." The sergeant's jaw tightened. "We're coming in." But before he could order the door forced open, Shadow made the decision for them. A sudden, violent thud slammed against the inside of the door, so hard that the metal handle rattled. Officers drew their weapons instantly. Emma yelped. Olivia covered her ears. Mark stepped in front of his family instinctively. Sergeant Cole motioned for silence. Another thud, then another. Then a sound like claws dragging down the wood. Cole whispered into his radio, "Unit 3, hold position. Breach on my signal." But before the breaching tool arrived, the unexpected happened. The door clicked. Slowly. Carefully. Dr. Harris unlocked it from the inside. He cracked it open just enough to reveal his pale, trembling face. "Do not shoot," he said urgently. "He's not attacking. He's protecting." Cole pushed the door wider. And there he was. Shadow stood in front of the vet, body rigid, eyes glowing with an intensity that made every officer freeze. His stance wasn't aggressive, but defensive. He was shielding the vet from the armed men. A police officer gasped. "He's guarding him." Shadow didn't blink. His gaze flicked from one officer to another, analyzing each one, judging threat levels. His chest rose slowly, controlled, like a trained operative breathing under fire. Sergeant Cole lowered his weapon an inch. "What did you find in him, Doctor?" Dr. Harris swallowed. "It's classified technology," he whispered. "Tech I've only seen in restricted military documents." Mark stepped forward. "What does that mean?" The vet met his eyes, voice barely steady. "It means this dog wasn't retired from a police program." He glanced at Shadow, then back at the officers. He was part of something far bigger. Sergeant Cole exchanged a tense glance with the other officers before stepping deeper into the exam room. Shadow didn't move. He didn't growl. He simply stood between the vet and the police, silent, alert, and terrifyingly intelligent. Cole lowered his weapon slowly. "Shadow, stand down." The dog didn't blink, didn't shift, didn't even breathe noticeably. He was waiting, watching, calculating. Dr. Harris spoke first, his voice trembling. "Sergeant, I scanned the implant again. This device isn't medical. It's engineered, and there's more than one." Cole nodded stiffly. "We know." Olivia gasped. "You know? Then tell us what he is." Cole hesitated, long enough that Mark took a protective step toward his family. The officers noticed, and so did Shadow. His head tilted slightly, analyzing the shift in body language. Finally, Cole exhaled. Shadow wasn't supposed to end up in civilian hands. His transfer papers were forged. "Forged?" Mark repeated, voice tight. "By who?" Cole stared at the floor for a moment before answering. "Shadow is part of a classified tactical program. Codename, Project Iron Fang." The room fell silent. Cole continued carefully, choosing each word like it weighed a ton. "Years ago, a specialized division experimented with advanced K-9 operatives. Not regular police, dogs, bio-enhanced, surgically augmented, neurologically conditioned units designed for high-risk missions. Shadow was one of their most successful prototypes." Olivia felt her breath catch. "You're telling me he isn't natural?" Cole shook his head. "He's a dog, but his senses, reflexes, and implant systems aren't. He was trained to detect threats normal dogs can't. Explosives, biohazards, chemical markers, even certain human behavioral patterns." Emma hugged Shadow's leg, her voice small. "But he's good. He saved me at the park." Cole's eyes softened. "Yes, because he bonds deeply with his chosen unit." Mark frowned. "Unit? You mean family?" Cole nodded. Shadow's design made him loyal to whoever he identifies as his primary group. Once he attaches, he protects them with military-level precision. Olivia whispered, "He chose us." The sergeant's next words were quieter. 3 years ago, Shadow led a classified mission that went wrong. His team was ambushed. The official report listed him as unrecoverable. Everyone believed he died. Dr. Harris swallowed hard, but he didn't. Cole met Mark's eyes. "No, and someone smuggled him out before the agency could retrieve him. We never found who, but someone wanted him hidden." Shadow finally moved. He stepped forward, placing himself between the Johnson family and the officers, loyalty clear in every line of his body. Cole raised his hands, signaling peace. He's not dangerous to you, but the implants inside him, they're unstable, and that's why we need him back. Mark shook his head instantly. He's part of our family now. Shadow growled softly, not at the family, at the officers. Cole stiffened. The battle lines had been silently drawn, and Shadow had already chosen his side. Dr. Harris took a shaky step toward the officers, though his voice trembled with fear. "Sergeant, you need to understand something. I didn't call you because of the implant itself. I called because of what it's doing." Cole narrowed his eyes. "Explain." The vet pointed his penlight toward Shadow's ribcage. Even through the dog's smooth dark skin, faint metallic lines pulsed beneath the surface, slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat made of machinery. "When I scanned it," Dr. Harris said, "the device didn't just activate, it responded, as if it recognized the scanner, as if it recognized me." Olivia felt her stomach twist. "Recognized you? How?" Dr. Harris hesitated. "Because the implant emitted a distress signal." Cole stiffened. "A what?" "A coded distress beacon used in certain covert units," the vet said. "I only know because years ago I treated a retired military dog who had a similar system. Older, less advanced. Shadow's is far more sophisticated." Mark stepped forward. "Why would a distress signal activate now?" The vet's answer was quiet, but chilling. "Because the implant believes Shadow's life is in danger." Shadow shifted uneasily, his eyes flicking toward Emma as if verifying she was safe. His breathing quickened, not from fear, but from heightened alertness. Cole's jaw tightened. "What else did the scanner show?" Dr. Harris swallowed. "There's a second component, attached to the main implant." Cole frowned. "A tracker?" "No," the vet whispered. "Something worse." He walked to the counter, retrieved a printout from the scanner, and held it up with shaking hands. On the paper were outlines of two embedded structures, one large rectangle near Shadow's ribs, and a smaller, capsule-shaped object deeper in his abdomen. Olivia blanched. "What is that?" Dr. Harris met her eyes, voice breaking. "A containment unit." The room froze. Mark's pulse hammered. "A containment unit for what?" The vet inhaled shakily. "For detecting hazardous biological agents. Shadow wasn't just trained to find them. He was engineered to carry a fail-safe system. If he ever encountered contamination, this device could absorb trace amounts to prevent spread." "But—" He didn't finish. Cole stepped closer, expression hard. "But what, Doctor?" Dr. Harris forced the words out. "But if that device malfunctions, it releases everything it absorbs." Olivia gasped. "Meaning?" "It means," the vet said, voice trembling, "if this implant is unstable, Shadow could unintentionally release dangerous biological material. Not by choice, by malfunction." Emma hugged Shadow tighter, tears filling her eyes. "He would never hurt us." Shadow pressed his head gently against her shoulder as if promising exactly that. Cole exhaled slowly. "This is why we needed him back. Not because he's dangerous, but because he's a risk if those devices fail." Mark stood firm. "He saved our daughter. He protected us. He isn't a risk, he's a hero." Shadow growled softly. "Not at the family, but at the officers again." Cole swallowed. "The problem," he said quietly, "is that heroes sometimes carry the biggest dangers." The tension in the exam room was so thick it felt like the air itself had weight. Officers stood with hands close to their weapons. Mark held Olivia protectively. Emma clung to Shadow, burying her face in his neck. And Shadow. Shadow stood like a silent wall, positioned between his family and the police, every muscle drawn tight. Sergeant Cole took a slow step forward, palms raised. "We're not here to hurt him. But we must take him back. That implant is unstable. If anything triggers it—" Shadow growled, a deep, rumbling warning that echoed off the walls. Emma trembled. "Don't take him away. Please, he saved me." The dog pressed closer to her, nudging her arm with a gentle whine, the softest, most human-like sound he had ever made. His entire demeanor shifted when she touched him. His rigid stance softened. His tail lowered, and he leaned into her as if she were the only thing anchoring him. Cole swallowed. "I understand he's attached, but he wasn't designed for family life. He was built for missions, combat, risk. You don't know what could—" Shadow suddenly stepped forward, but not toward the officers, toward Mark. The dog sat at his feet, lifting his head high, eyes locked onto him with a look that was unmistakable. Loyalty, choice, declaration. Mark knelt slowly, resting a trembling hand on Shadow's shoulder. "Are you telling me you're with us?" Shadow leaned into his touch. Emma sniffled. "He chose Daddy." Olivia placed her hand gently on Shadow, too, her voice soft. "He chose all of us." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Sergeant Cole exhaled sharply, frustration mounting. "This is exactly the problem. These prototype units were never supposed to bond with civilian families. They form attachments that override protocol." Mark stood and squared his shoulders. "Maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe it's the first good thing that ever happened to him." Cole hardened. "Good or not, if the implant fails, you're all in danger, and so is everyone around you." Shadow stiffened again, not at the threat, at the shift in tone. His eyes narrowed, his ears pricked forward, his breathing slowed into a focused rhythm, one Mark recognized from earlier. Shadow was preparing to defend. Cole raised a hand, signaling his officers to stay still. "Don't provoke him." But the decision was already made. Shadow stepped in front of his family again and lowered into a stance that was unmistakably tactical. His tail straightened, his head dipped, his paws spread. He was ready to fight if he had to. Mark placed a hand on his back. "No, you don't need to do that." Shadow glanced up, eyes softening for a heartbeat. Then, a sudden crash echoed outside the clinic. Everyone froze. Shadow snapped his head toward the sound, ears high, pupils widening with recognition. He didn't just hear something, he detected something, and whatever it was worse than the officers inside. The crash outside was so loud it rattled the windows. Everyone in the clinic flinched, everyone except Shadow. His entire body snapped upright, ears pointing like antennae, muscles vibrating with sudden urgency. He wasn't growling anymore. He was listening. Sergeant Cole whipped toward the front doors. "What was that?" Another sound followed. A metallic clang, a muffled thud, and then a sharp hiss. Shadow bolted toward the hallway before anyone could stop him. "Shadow!" Emma cried, reaching after him, but Mark held her back. "Let him go," he whispered. "He knows something's wrong." The dog sprinted to the clinic entrance, claws skidding across the tiles. He stopped suddenly, nose pressed to the gap under the door, chest rising and falling in rapid bursts. His pupils shrank. His entire body stiffened. Cole rushed. "Forward. Units, be ready." Shadow slammed his body into the door with explosive force. The officers jumped back. "What is he doing?" Olivia shouted. Mark's voice cracked. "He's trying to open it." Shadow rammed the door again, this time with a deep, guttural bark that shook the room. Not aggression. Warning. Cole signaled 2 officers. "Weapons up. Open the door on my mark." But the moment the door swung open, a thick chemical odor seeped inside. Dr. Harris staggered back. "That smell. Oh, God, that's not natural." Shadow didn't hesitate. He shot out of the building like a missile, nose tracking the air, following the scent with terrifying precision. "Shadow, wait!" Mark sprinted after him, but Cole grabbed his arm. "Don't. Whatever's out there, that dog was trained to handle it. You weren't." Shadow sprinted across the parking lot and straight toward the abandoned storage facility behind the clinic, an old metal building no one had used in years. Another hiss escaped from inside. Shadow froze at the doorway, head low, body trembling with focused intensity. Then he turned toward the humans following behind, Mark, Olivia, Emma, the vet, and the officers, locking eyes with them. And for the first time, Shadow barked not in warning, but in command. Cole cursed under his breath. "He's signaling danger." "What kind?" Olivia whispered. Dr. Harris answered, voice tight with fear. "The kind his implant was designed for." Shadow stepped into the dark building. No hesitation, no fear. Mission mode activated. Cole drew his weapon. He's tracking a biological threat. If something was released... A shadow moved inside the facility. Shadow growled, loud and vicious. Then, a metal canister rolled into view, leaking a faint mist. Dr. Harris gasped. "That's a biostorage container. If it ruptures..." Shadow lunged forward, teeth locking onto the canister, dragging it away from the group with every ounce of strength in his modified body. Mark shouted helplessly, "Shadow!" But it was too late. Shadow wasn't just detecting the threat. He was stopping it, alone. Shadow dragged the hissing canister deeper into the storage building, every muscle straining, claws scraping against concrete. The mist, leaking from the metal capsule, hung in the air like a ghostly fog. Officers shouted warnings, but Shadow ignored them. His focus locked only on moving the threat away from the humans he had silently sworn to protect. "Shadow, come back!" Emma screamed, her tiny voice cracking. He didn't look back. Sergeant Cole pushed forward, holding an arm out to block Mark. "Stay back. If that's a biohazard, exposure could be deadly." "But he's going in alone," Mark yelled, voice raw. Cole's eyes softened. That's what he was built for. Inside the dim facility, Shadow shoved the canister into a far corner, away from everyone. The capsule hissed louder, releasing another trail of vapor. Shadow positioned himself between the leak and the doorway, absorbing as much as his system could detect, just like he had been engineered to do. Dr. Harris watched in horrified awe. "He's activating the containment implant. He's neutralizing the airborne traces." "That's not possible," one officer said. "It is," the vet whispered. "He was designed to protect human teams, even at the cost of himself." Cole cursed under his breath. "We need hazmat backup." But before the backup could arrive, Shadow began coughing, a harsh, guttural choke that echoed through the metal walls. Emma sobbed. "He's hurting. Do something." Shadow staggered forward, legs trembling. His yellow eyes flicked toward the doorway where Emma stood crying. He gave a soft, trembling whine, an apology, a promise, maybe even a goodbye. Then he collapsed to one knee. Mark broke past Cole and sprinted inside before anyone could stop him. "Shadow, Shadow, stay. With us!" Olivia ran after him, tears streaming. Emma followed, despite Cole's desperate shouts. Shadow lifted his head weakly as they surrounded him. Mark placed both hands on the dog's trembling body. "You did it. You saved everyone. Just hold on." Shadow's chest rose and fell unevenly. His eyes flicked toward each member of the family, Mark, Olivia, Emma, and settled on the little girl. He nudged her hand gently, reassuringly, despite his weakening strength. Hazmat teams finally stormed in, securing the leaking canister. One of them checked a handheld reader and froze, eyes wide. Whatever was in that container, it's been suppressed, completely. Cole exhaled, stunned. He neutralized it? The hazmat officer nodded. Your dog just prevented a biological release. This town owes him its lives. Mark held Shadow's head as tears dripped onto his dark skin. You're not a weapon, he whispered. You're a hero. Cole stepped forward. removing his cap in respect. Shadow's record will be cleared. From this moment on, he's officially recognized as a service hero. Shadow blinked slowly as if understanding. Then his breathing steadied. Still weak, but alive. He had survived, and he had finally been seen not as a project, but as a protector. Shadow spent 2 nights at the Emergency Containment Unit, watched closely by hazmat specialists, military biotech engineers, and Dr. Harris himself. The Johnsons remained in the waiting room the entire time, sleeping in chairs, pacing the halls, and praying for the strange retired dog who had become the heart of their family. Emma refused to leave. She held Shadow's collar in her lap the whole time, whispering, "Please, come back. Please, don't leave me," like a lullaby meant for him alone. On the 3rd morning, the door finally opened. Dr. Harris stepped out, exhausted but smiling. "He's stable," he announced softly. "He fought hard, and he won." Emma burst into tears. Olivia covered her mouth with relief. Mark let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They hurried inside. Shadow lay on a padded recovery bed, wrapped in warm blankets, an IV line in his side. His eyes fluttered open the moment he sensed them. Not when they spoke, not when they walked, but the instant they felt close. Emma ran forward, and Shadow lifted his head weakly, meeting her halfway. She hugged him gently, pressing her cheek against his. Shadow's tail thumped softly against the blankets, slow, tired, but full of love. Mark knelt beside him. "You saved this entire town," he whispered, "but you nearly broke our hearts." Olivia stroked his neck. "You're home now, Shadow. For good." Sergeant Cole entered quietly behind them. He no longer carried the rigid authority he had before. His expression was one of respect and apology. "The agency has reviewed everything," he said. "Shadow's implants will be monitored, but he is no longer classified as government property. His record has been rewritten to where it should have been from the start." Mark looked up sharply. "Meaning?" Cole offered a small smile. "Meaning he belongs with the family he chose." Emma grinned through her tears and hugged Shadow tighter. "He chose us. I told you." Shadow nudged her hand, his eyes softening. Cole cleared his throat, visibly moved. "With your permission, we'd like to honor him next month at the heroic service ceremony. A medal, a public recognition. He deserves it." Mark nodded. "He deserves everything." Later that evening, the Johnsons brought Shadow home. The house felt different now, safer, warmer, almost sacred. Shadow walked slowly through each room, as if checking every corner, not out of fear, but habit. His instincts would never leave him. But when he reached Emma's bedroom, he stopped. He nudged the door open, walked inside, and curled up at the foot of her bed. Emma climbed beside him, resting her hand on his back. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. Shadow closed his eyes, breathing deeply, peacefully, for the first time since he entered their lives. The strange, retired police dog, the world forgot, had finally found the family he was meant to protect, and the home he was meant to love.